Hello everyone, this is David, and tonight's movie that we watched is Godzilla vs. SpaceGodzilla. Now, this is a interesting entry into the Heisei era because we're closing in on the end of the Heisei era now. This is the second to last film, and honestly, I consider this the weakest of the Heisei era. It's by no means a bad movie, but in terms of the others in the series, this particular series, it's probably the least well done. There's certain scenes where the budget just looks like it's pretty bad. Any of the space scenes just look kind of dopey. And after having several movies where we have robot or cyborg monsters, one of the new, monsters in this one, Mogera, just looks kind of dopey comparatively. Like, Mechagodzilla looked really good. Mecha King Ghidorah looked really good. Mogera, you look at him and you just kind of laugh. I mean, he looks like Mogera from the Mysterians, but I don't think that particular look really looks all that good these days. I don't know. The effect doesn't work for me, and it just feels like the budget was not as big, and I don't know what the actual budget was, but it just feels like it's done a little cheaper. So anyway, let's get on to this movie, or more accurate, let's get on to the monsters, because there's a couple new ones, or returning ones. So we got Godzilla. He's come back. We got Baby Godzilla, or Little Godzilla in this one. He's a little different. He looks more like he looks way cuter than he did in the last movie, and he's a lot bigger now. He's bigger than man-sized, so that's a thing. And so we got two bonus monsters basically in this one. Well, not really bonus monsters, but we got SpaceGodzilla, who's pretty interesting. His origin is really confusing, though. So he was created by Godzilla cells being taken into space by either Mothra or Biollante. They say it could have been either. Not entirely sure which, even though in this alternate timeline, Biollante shouldn't exist. But whatever. And the particles, or cells, got exposed to black hole radiation, sucked in, and spit out somewhere else through a white hole. Don't know if those are real or not, but okay. But shot out through a white hole and formed into SpaceGodzilla. And SpaceGodzilla is basically, he kind of looks like Godzilla, except he has crystals on his back instead of spines. And he's got two big ones for like big old shoulder pads that are kind of cool. And he's got a myriad of interesting powers. He's telekinetic. He can fly. He can fly through space too, which, he's the first space monster in the Heisei era, which is kind of interesting. He's the only one in the Heisei era, actually. Let's see, what else can he do? He's got atomic breath. He can, like I said, he's telekinetic. He can create and manipulate crystal, which is interesting. And he can absorb power from the planet itself to make himself more powerful. He's basically like Lavos, actually. Like, if you've ever played Chrono Trigger, you know what I'm talking about. He's like Godzilla and Lavos had a crazy flipper baby, and SpaceGodzilla is the result. And he's a pretty formidable foe, all things considered. Yeah, so there's that. And then we were going to get onto Mogera. And Mogera is basically like, if you took Mechagodzilla and just dubbed him down and made him more kid-friendly, that's what Mogera is. He's like, everything what Mechagodzilla could do, he does, but lamer. So, there you go. He's like a less cool version of Mechagodzilla, which is kind of sad. So anyway, this movie starts off with a bunch of people setting up on the Birth Island, the island where they found, I believe, Godzilla's son. And they're setting up a project, two projects actually, Project T, to control Godzilla with psychic powers. And I forget what they named the other project, but it basically is Project Kill the Fuck Out of Godzilla. And so they set up, and they're trying to do that, and surprise, surprise, it doesn't work. They plant like a mind control device on him. I think in this one, it doesn't work. It never works. So then Mogera, which is this dopey looking robot, they pick up this object coming in from space. So Mogera goes to investigate SpaceGodzilla. They get into a space fight. SpaceGodzilla kicks its ass, flies down to Earth. And finds Godzilla because he's attracted to his radiation. Finds Godzilla's son, actually, first. basically puts him in a cage, traps him. Godzilla shows up, he's pissed, fights SpaceGodzilla. He uses his atomic breath. SpaceGodzilla deflects his atomic breath with a shield. Forgot to mention that when describing him. He has a shield that he can generate, which is pretty good. Deflects it with a shield, beats the crap out of Godzilla, flies off to Tokyo to take over the world, basically. And I get the idea that this monster is considerably more intelligent than other monsters. He just doesn't talk to people because he has no reason to. He's kind of like an angry space god, if you will. And they actually make that reference at one point. One of the reporters calls him an angry god, which is kind of funny. But anyway, so he flies over to like Tokyo or something like that. Not quite Tokyo. He flies over to some city. I think it was Fukuoka or something like that. Fukuoka. Yeah, that's where he goes. And meanwhile, Miki Sagusa gets kidnapped by the Yakuza, who want to use her psychic powers to control Godzilla to take over the world. Or something along those lines. Which is a problem. But that ends up not working. SpaceGodzilla ends up killing all of the Yakuza accidentally, I believe. So what ends up happening is the Japanese Defense Force, using Mogera and Godzilla, converge on converge on SpaceGodzilla, and they fight him. And basically what ends up happening is they find out he's using Fukuoka Tower as a power sink to draw energy from the planet to make himself more powerful, and he built like this crystal fortress. So they have to storm the crystal fortress, which is pretty cool. And basically, Mogera destroys the two giant crystals, which are basically like power harnesses on I keep calling him SpaceGodzilla's shoulders. And they destroy those, so he can't shield himself, so Godzilla blasts him. SpaceGodzilla, in response, uses the crystals as like projectile weapons and starts throwing them at people. And these are big crystals. They're kaiju-sized crystals, so they hurt when they hit. It's a brutal fight. Excuse me. Long, brutal fight. And in the end, Mogera's destroyed. SpaceGodzilla. I don't know why I keep calling him SpaceGodzilla. Maybe it's just because he's an antagonistic to Godzilla entity I'm used to call. Oh, well, whatever. Anyway, so SpaceGodzilla ends up getting knocked onto Mogera, and Godzilla blows them both up, killing them both, allegedly. Although SpaceGodzilla's dust goes into space, so he may or may not be defeated. And Godzilla returns to Birth Island and frees his son. And Miki uses her psychic powers to basically take the mind control device off Godzilla so that he won't be fucked with or controlled by humans for taking over the world anymore, which is good. And that's pretty much the movie. It's a pretty good one. Well, it's an okay movie. The special effects are not as good as previous Godzilla films in the Heisei era, which is unfortunate. The suits look good, but it's just like Mogera's a subpar design. SpaceGodzilla is really just a redesign of Godzilla with some crystals. So that's kind of unfortunate. I kind of wish they would have done a little bit more. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see a different version of Godzilla, like What If a Godzilla, but still, SpaceGodzilla is not a very original name. Like, it's Godzilla from space, so it's SpaceGodzilla. Why wouldn't you just call him a different monster? He kind of looks like Godzilla, but he's got enough differences where I could call him a completely different monster. I mean, Gorosaurus kind of looks like Godzilla, except he's got more of a dinosaur head than a Godzilla head. You could easily have just named him something else. I don't know what you would have called him, but there's that. And yeah, that's about it. Like, this movie's okay. It's not special. It's not really good. Well, I'm kind of talking in circles at the moment. It's not that it's not good. It's just like, of the Heisei era, it is, in my opinion, it's a fun movie, but it's got, I think, the lowest production value in terms of what is on screen. I don't know what the actual budget was, again. And the bad guy feels a little lazy, like they were running out of ideas. He's a space monster. This is the only time space monsters have been mentioned in the Heisei era. and it is in fact the only time they're mentioned at all. So that's a little weird. Usually space monsters are associated with aliens, with the exception of King Ghidorah, or something else happens. But no, he's the only one, so he's kind of out of place like that. All the other monsters are either natural or created by man, or whatnot, or from Earth at the very least. So that's kind of weird. But anyway, so I definitely say you should check out this movie at least once. You may love it, you may hate it. Either way, it's an interesting entry. It shows you a little bit of different, like, what if Godzilla was like just lavos, basically. So if you like that sort of thing, you like this movie. If you don't like that sort of thing, you probably won't like this movie. But anyway, tune in next time as we close out the Heisei era with Godzilla versus Destroyer. I can't pronounce that correctly, but yeah, it's not Destroyer, it's Destroyer. I don't know why, but that's his name. All right, folks, good night.